Hello, I'm my 4-track machine, and I'm going to be sharing some thoughts on the System-500 505 VCF by Roland. The 505 is a 16 HP dual filter based on the design of the Roland SH5. The first filter is a multi-mode design with a non-self-oscillating resonance. The second is a dedicated bandpass with a uniquely driven character. For now, let's take a quick listen to this patch I made using the 505 filter and talk about how I'm using it. So what we're looking at is the patch I used in the background music you heard previously. The oscillator I used came from the Mother 32, where I mixed the square and saw waves and added some modulation and a tiny bit of vibrato to give the tone a bit of motion and interest. From there, the signal goes directly to the 505's inputs and is routed to both VCFs. The 505 has two inputs that can be set to send the signal to either one or both of the filters and out to the channel's VCA. It's a very clever design that opens up a lot of possibilities for layering. You can adjust the routing via the switches next to the inputs up top. The multi-mode VCF is set to low-pass mode, and I use noise as a modulation source, dialed in via the dedicated attenuator right here. I find that using noise as a modulation source kind of gives the signal a bit of character and adds a bit of dust to the sound. I personally just really like it. To control the opening and closing of a filter, I used an envelope that I attenuated using maths to allow for control over the intensity of the modulation. The key input is perfect for adding the second layer of modulation. I personally love when modules allow for more than one source of control over a parameter, as it helps add a lot of complexity. So, for the bandpass filter, I routed an LFO to the frequency of the filter to give it a bit of extra motion. I could have CV'd this output and used it as a VCA, but instead I chose to abuse and drive the signal a bit more by ramming it through the VCA, the dual VCA that I have over here, and finally sending out that signal to a wash of reverb. Let's actually show off what I was doing. So just for reference, this is what it sounds like wide open with just the oscillators. Now let's close this filter down, bring in that attenuation on the maths. I'm gonna bring in that noise modulation. Kind of gives it almost a distorted quality to it. So, I'm gonna introduce a little bit of that resonance. It has a nice dark bounce to it, kind of very rubbery in nature. Open that filter a little bit more, maybe extend it out. Yeah, it's nice. Now, maybe roll this back a little bit. I'm gonna start bringing in that overdrive from the secondary filters. There's a little extra volume. I'm gonna bring that back down a little bit. Bring in that reverb. Bring in more modulation for the bandpass. Yeah. And that's how that was made. So I'm going to quickly go through the different modes of the multi-mode filter. Let's start off with the low-pass filter. I'm using a saw wave to demonstrate a filter sweep. Filter sweep without any resonance. It's a very dark, kind of smooth tone. I'm going to add in some resonance now. Right about 50% resonance. Yeah, what we're starting to hear is a little quack, especially in those upper ranges. I'm going to go ahead and add in the full resonance. Yeah, that quack is really accentuated on the top. One unique characteristic about the low-pass mode is that I'm noticing you don't get any dropout as you turn up the resonance. That's a pretty nice characteristic. So we're going to move on to the bandpass filter. Let's do a quick sweep. So right around there, I'm hearing a little drive. Let's bring that down. Let's go ahead and add some resonance. It's a pretty nice throaty sound. Let's go ahead and add full resonance. Finally, let's do a sweep of the high pass filter. I'm gonna turn it up right now. Notice it doesn't fully cut out the signal. The slope on this seems to be pretty light. Let's add a little resonance and see how this sounds. Yeah, it's those upper ranges. Full resonance. There's a lot of play with that middle section. Let's move on to the second filter. So to demonstrate the second filter, I don't even have to unplug anything. I'm just going to quickly flip the routing switch of the input up top. Let's take a listen. Right away you can hear a slight difference in the bandpass between the first filter and the second filter. There seems to be a little more drive. I'm going to add in some resonance. It's a driven, kind of quacky vowel sound. I'm gonna add even more resonance. kind of starts to break up and distort in certain areas. The center area. Whoa. Gets really nasty. Right around there, you kind of get a full-on sub sound. Distorted and dirty. That is nice and angry. That bandpass filter is insane. Totally different characteristic from the first one. This one is way more driven, way more hard-hitting. It screams, it breaks up. It is fantastic. In order to demonstrate the complex patching you can do with the 505, I've hooked up 3 separate LFOs. The 3 LFOs are all set to different times and are routed back into each other to make some complex modulation sources. None of this is triggered or in time, it just kind of goes on its own. Okay, so let's increase the volume. What we are hearing is the first LFO that is being modulated by the other. The rate is adjusting, giving us a complex kind of warble. I'm going to go ahead and add the second LFO. And the third LFO. Let's play around with the different modes. Maybe patch in a little bit of echo. Let's try adding the dedicated bandpass filter. Alright, so we're currently routed directly to the multi-mode filter. Let's add in bandpass. Let's take a listen to our patch with an additional 3 LFOs. Switch to dual bandpass mode. And we got a high pass mode. Lovely. I've patched up a pretty standard mono synth path. Let's take a listen. So what we are hearing right now is just a little simple sequence, and we have the first VCF just in a low pass mode. If we start to bring in the second layer, we can start experimenting with 2 parallel filters. You even though the low pass is cutting off a lot of that upper end, we can leave in a little bit of extra sizzle. This sounds pretty nice when you're adjusting, evolving arpeggio pattern. I'm going to go ahead and add a touch of reverb. So for this example, I wanted to see how the VCF handles being driven a little bit. I've sent in a signal through my double VCAs again, this time pre-VCF, and I have it set up so that we can give it a little bit of extra overdrive. Let's take a listen to how that sounds. So right now we have a pretty clean signal. Let me open this up. Just a folded oscillator. Just normal sweep. A little extra volume boost, and let's sweep through, see how that sounds. There's a lot of extra weight and drives the signal. So I'm going to try that again, and this time I'm going to add in the second band pass. So let's start up the sequence. Right now we have no drive added. Sweeping through. Alright, let's add in some drive. Definitely more aggressive, but it still tones the shape quite well. Almost sounds metallic right there. Alright, so I unpatched and repatched everything, and this time around we're going to kind of show off what the 505 sounds like processing noise. This thing is perfect for creating, I guess, cymbals from like CR78 drum machine from back in the day. So I've hooked up the Turing machine to send out a few random pulses and create a little pattern from that. Let's go ahead and plug that in and take a quick listen. So right away, you kind of hear that drum machine sound. Like it's a very shrill upper end, and I think that comes from this distortion. Whatever it's doing is working. You can kind of bring it up and down. So as a final experiment, I decided to loop up a feedback loop. I did that using my mults, and I have it running a little sequence. Let's take a listen. Now we got into some high-pitched ticking. Ooh, dropped an octave. Weird, you almost kind of get some kind of folding. because it's a feedback loop, as I lower the volume, for some reason, the pitch changes as well. So, did this filter meet my hopes and dreams? The 505 has an interesting tone, a nice execution, and is wonderful to modulate. I really enjoy it for layering. It might sound like I'm saying no and then kind of changing to a yes, but while I feel the filter is great, personally, I'm looking for something a bit more specific for my system. I was kind of looking for something that is full and aggressive with an aesthetic squelch to offset it. For me, the 505's low-pass filter just fell short of where I wanted to push it. This wasn't a full deal breaker, and I might have been okay with it if there wasn't one really big issue. Huge, actually. I'm not talking figuratively. The 505 is a 16 HP module. That is a giant for my smaller system. I couldn't help but feel like I could fill my real estate a bit more effectively. In the end, I didn't feel like the 505 was right for my system, but I've decided to keep it for a future larger system. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to follow and like if you are interested in hearing more of my exploration, and comment with any suggestions or thoughts on my filter quest. Thanks again. And for now, I'll leave you with this generative patch to enjoy. Until next time.